This was the view from my office in 2018 when I decided to quit consulting. Consulting is dubbed as one of the most prestigious and one of the most lucrative careers out there. And yet in 2018, I decided to quit. And I know during the holiday period coming up to the new year, a lot of us reflect back on our careers and what we want out of our careers. And if that's you, get a drink, sit back, relax, because I'm going to spill the tea on why I quit my consulting career. First things first though, I loved consulting. I could not have wished for a better start to my career, and I am so immensely grateful for the amazing opportunities that I was given within consulting. So if you are still early on in your career, this section about what I learned in consulting might be for you. The first thing I learned in consulting was business. I had a background in business because I studied economics. However, consulting really grounded it for me and made it so much more real. It really made me think about the financial statements that I was reading. I learned about the language of finance and the levers that you could pull to actually make more money in your business and your career. The second thing consulting taught me was structured thinking. And a lot of people talk about structured communication, but structured thinking is something that comes one step before structured communication. And when you learn the art of structured communication, you realize the building blocks that go into putting together a logically coherent argument. And consulting drills that in you. Of course, this does not mean that you will always come across as a super structured person. However, your logical flow will be intact. The third thing that consulting taught me was how to talk to anyone. I know this is a bit of a weird one, but a lot of us are quite introverted and shy when it comes to talking to strangers. But even as a first-year consultant, I got really comfortable with picking up the phone and speaking to whoever it is that I needed to speak to. And that, in fact, is one of the key skills that accelerated my consulting growth trajectory. Yeah, so those were the three key things that I learned in consulting that I truly value as of today. However, there were a few things that consulting demanded from me as an employee. The first one was travel. Of course, things could have changed after the pandemic, but before the pandemic, I was traveling Mondays to Thursdays and coming into my home office only on Fridays. So I traveled a lot, and a lot of people on the outside glamorize the consulting travel. Sometimes it is glamorous. However, there are times when you are the only person in a remote village in the middle of nowhere trying to go through the client's deals or the client's files. And when you do that on repeat for 6-8 weeks and then some, it really gets to you. The next thing that consulting demanded from me was my time. There were times, of course, that I would have 2-hour days, but most days I would end up having 14-16-hour days. And I was clocking my hours, sometimes working 100-hour weeks, and it was frankly getting a bit unsustainable. Not everyone who works in consulting needs to go through that, but actually for many of us, perhaps for the higher percentage of us, we have worked through those 100-hour weeks. And when you go through those 100-hour weeks on repeat, it does cause some anxiety and some burnout. And this is due to no fault of the firms. This essentially is an internal thing and also where your sponsorship is coming from. The third thing consulting demanded of us was business skills. And we talked business day in and day out. Sometimes I joke that even if you wake me up in the middle of the night and ask me to construct a business analysis problem, I could easily structure that in my sleep in a PowerPoint or an Excel. That is the consulting superpower that consulting requires you to really be savvy with business. And if you're not, consulting might not be the best career option for you. Sure, you can get into a tech consulting house, but ultimately you need to understand your client's business, and only technical skills will not cut it, especially if you are wanting to climb the ranks. The next thing that consulting requires from you is a bit of an extroverted personality. And I'll be honest, I am quite an introverted person. However, that skill that you build of how to talk to anyone and the skill that you indeed need to work with a lot of different stakeholders from across the business and your client's business demands that extroverted personality. But that's not to say that introverted people don't become successful in the consulting lifestyle. However, you will see that the introverts typically adapt like how I did. The next thing that consulting requires from you is this problem-solving mindset. Consulting Consultants are typically called upon when things are falling apart. They are called upon to mend a situation which needs fixing, which means that as a consultant, I have always been in the firefighting mode, always been problem solving, because without problems, consultants don't exist. You need consultants only when something's going wrong or you want to turn around something, which means that you have identified a problem that needs to be solved by a consultant. So problem solving mindset is something that consulting continuously requires. The next thing that consulting requires is sponsorship. If you want to grow in the field, you need sponsors who will back you through your career within the firm. And this is where I will start getting into the detail of why I chose to leave consulting in 2018. So in 2017, my sponsor partner was let go, and the directors and partners who were indeed sponsoring me were also thinking about moving, which means that my sponsorship in the firm was at risk. And without sponsorship, you will end up doing a lot of the hours in consulting without really seeing the results, which means that you will probably be quite a meagerly paid consultant, especially if you are in the UK. If you are in the US, consulting pays a lot more. However, in the UK, consulting does not pay as much. So if you are in the UK and you are a junior consultant and you don't have enough sponsorship at your organization for your promotion case, you might end up working those long hours at much lower salary levels without a plan to get out. Which is why in 2018, I started looking out for consulting exit options. And I Googled for months at a stretch till I got all of the information in one place and distilled it into the ultimate guide to consulting exits, which is a 40-page free guide that I wrote. I'll link it below in the comments for you to go grab it. Money was one of the key reasons that I left consulting in 2018. The second reason I left consulting was because of the travel. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against the travel, but actually when you are traveling and working 100-hour weeks, you don't get to build something of your own on the side. And at this point in my career, I came across a book called The 4-Hour Work Week, and I wanted to work on something on the side. However, when you are alone in a hotel room working 100-hour weeks, it really becomes difficult to focus on something of your own and create a side hustle out of it. And in 2018, that's what I was wanting to do. And finally, before I go on to the last reason, I observed an interesting statistic, which is 76% of you who are watching this channel are not subscribing. And I frankly would love for you to subscribe to that channel. It does help me out and the channel out and keeps me motivated to create this content for you. So if you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button and I'll make sure that I keep creating good content for you. And the final reason why I chose to leave consulting in 2018, and I can guarantee that not many of you are thinking like this, is that I wanted to become a better consultant. I loved consulting. Consulting is my one true love because I am a problem solver at heart. I love seeing business problems and I love solving business problems. However, after spending 8-9 years in consulting, what I realized was that I was always brought in as the consultant to fix things without knowing the intricacies and the ground zero of the business. And I really wanted to see things from the other side. How does it feel like to be in a business before a consultant comes in? How does it feel like to work with a consultant? How does it feel like after the consultant has left? Does the work that we do as consultants even make an impact on the business? And sometimes I joke that I probably quit consulting only to realize that someday I will perhaps go back to consulting. Not yet, not right now, but consulting is this amazing career path that if you are on, all the best, enjoy it to the fullest. And after you are done, because I know most of us will be done after a point with consulting as a lifestyle, go check out the guide I have linked in below. And if you enjoyed this video, you'll enjoy something like this or this that I will link up. And I'll see you the next time. Bye.